Welcome to a special edition of the Grueling Sports Network. I am your host, Mike Goodpaster, and this is installment number 5 at our weekly shows involving Replenishing Care&Technologies founder James Comerford, whose company uses a wide mix of cellular health technologies and tools to help improve athletic performance and overall health. Today, James is going to be with us to talk about a very practical tool that helps keep your body in its proper structural alignment called Pelvic Correction technique. For anyone who has been to a chiropractor and been told of the effect, you have a short leg, which I have. James is here to elaborate on that and tell us how we can fix that. So right now, I want to welcome James from Replenishing Care and Technologies. How you doing today, James?
I'm doing wonderfully, Mike. Good to be here this morning.
All right, so for anybody that hasn't listened to our 4 previous shows, which you can get on thegruelingtruth.com and on rcant.com, go ahead and tell us a little bit about the Replenishing Care and Technologies model.
Well, thank you. Thanks, Mike. Replenishing Care and Technologies is a personal best performance and personal best fitness system that it helps people perform at their best by helping their bodies heal and repair at the best. And again, Mike touched on the website. It's www.rcant.com. Just to continue, the human body, as we all know to some extent, has an innate ability to heal and repair. That is actually our greatest health resource. And when we fully engage this internal healing capacity, we raise wellness outcomes and athletic and life performance pretty much exponentially. And it likewise amplifies the positive contributions of professional care, athletic training, good nutrition, exercise practices, and so forth. So essentially, RC&T is based upon using, restoring, and amplifying the body's own ability to heal and keep us at our best.
All right, so where does pelvic correction therapy fit into Replenishing Care and Technologies?
Well, RC&T stacks 11 plus what I call cellular health technologies together, and these either give cells the resources to perform, heal, and repair, or they help restore the body to homeostasis and or balance. Pelvic correction technique fits into the second group, which help the body stay in balance. And to do this, and you touched on it, I think, in the introduction, we use a very simple but highly effective physical therapy technique that uses a combination of 2 things. The first is a set of pelvic blocks, which look like large door stops, to correct balance in the pelvis and hips. And then the second is a specially designed neck roll that does 2 things. It both reestablishes the contour of the cervical spine, which is a fancy term for the curve of the neck, and this reduces forward head posture. And it also has a built-in traction piece that you place against a compensation point in the neck that gets created in response to the hips being out of alignment. We'll touch on that a little later in one of the questions down the line that I expect you'll ask me about how you actually use it and how you figure out the placement of it and those types of things. So I guess the short way or the short answer is it's pretty much my favorite way of thinking of pelvic correction technique. It is to spinal back and joint health what brushing and flossing is to dental health, and it does no harm. And in our case, and I don't want to go on and on here, what I also love about pelvic correction technique is how well it complements other things we do. Pelvic correction actually resets pelvic balance and connects with the memory receptors we have in the hips and the heels to communicate with one another. Vox Life, which we talked about last week, of course, communicates through the receptors of the peripheral nervous system and primarily the dermatomes in the balls of the feet. Path of Purity, the CBD, works through the endocannabinoid system, which is a whole series of very advanced neurotransmitters. So basically, all of this combination of things has the things in the body talking to each other and getting them to figure out how to best work together for us to be at our best. And then we add in PEMF, which upregulates everything, and you pretty much have something very powerful working for you.
All right, so did you want to talk about the importance of maintaining this specific pelvic and spinal balance for a bit?
Thank you, for bringing me back to pelvic correction. I went a little bit on the side there, but, I remember as a kid singing the song Dem Bones, and, one's connected to the other, and on it goes, and believe me, nobody wanted to hear me sing. But a lot of what goes on wrong with us are actually domino effects that go back to Dem Bones and the fact that everything is connected. And what actually happens in one of these domino effects is where you have a change or deficiency in one area, and it spills over and causes changes and problems elsewhere. And, anybody listening to this or whenever I'm presenting, pelvic correction or the other things to somebody, we've all had the experience where because we slept a certain way, lifted something too heavy or the wrong way, we have something that hurts or just doesn't feel right. So we start adjusting our mechanics to help alleviate the pain or discomfort, or we otherwise find a way to work around the effects of the first problem until it starts to feel better. What we're all pretty much unconscious of is the fact that we have an ongoing, gradual kind of deterioration at work all the time. And that's not to be dramatic. It's a little bit like not having the front end of your car properly aligned and finding one day that your tires are unevenly worn out. So, as much as we can sleep the wrong way and wake up the next day and be aware of something, it's really important for us to be conscious of the more subtle changes that occur over time. When I first saw pelvic correction demonstrated, it was about 20 years ago. And it was demonstrated with a family of 5 people. It was a mom and dad and 3 children. And the youngest of the children was literally about, call him 18 months old. He was maybe about 18 inches high, like a toddler generally will be. But when we did the physical test of his leg balance, the doctor who was doing it discovered that he was pretty much an inch or more short on one of the sides. I believe in his case, it was the left. And, when you think about a toddler, they're rolling around on footstools and doing all kinds of things, and their bodies are especially pliable. Well, what struck me and what the doctor impressed upon the family was that is the beginning of an imbalance pattern that at, 18 months old doesn't matter a whole lot. But if all of a sudden, if that imbalance pattern takes hold, by the time you put 20 years on it, 30, 40, 50, or 60 in my case, it's a whole lot of repetitive use, wear and tear, injury that occurs over time. And in my case, I had just flown from Eastern Canada to Denver, so I had 8 hours of being cooped up on an airplane. And I'll never forget the doctor looking at me and kind of smiling. He got me to lie down on his table. And at that time, I wasn't involved in this type of work, so I couldn't even describe what I was feeling. But it was basically elevation on one side versus the other, or my simple term was it was twisted. And he did pelvic correction on me, and I instantaneously felt the difference. And I was literally an advocate right at that moment in time.
All right, so can you briefly explain to us how this vicious cycle or domino effect happens?
Yeah, basically the human body is meant to be symmetrical. And what'll happen is we all are busy during the course of the day. So we'll start typically as a muscle imbalance in the upper body caused by just the way we sit, the way we move, the way we lift. And it actually causes a domino effect in which one of the hips, and a hip is a very complex model when you see it, kind of in a chiropractor's office. But if you think of it really simply, the hip is like a wheel, or at least we're going to ask people to think of it that way. So what will happen as a result of this imbalance in the upper body and this domino effect is it will cause the wheel on one side to rotate too far backward, and it pulls that leg that's attached to it upward or short, and the opposite one compensates by going too far forward. So you get what is called a functional short leg on one side or the other. Then if you think of the way that the body is designed, the pelvis holds up the upper body. And if you imagine the pelvis is now being held up unevenly because there is a functional short leg on one side or the other, the pelvis is naturally going to tip or drop to that short leg side. And then the vertebrae which stack on the pelvis in an effort to hold the head up straight start to compensate literally right at the pelvis. And so you get kind of a winding or twisting up through the spine that, to go back to me after my flight, I could feel my left shoulder kind of tipped back. And, you know, if I would have been able to see it, I'm sure it would have been elevated compared to the other side. So what will actually happen is that you'll get this imbalance up through the body, and ultimately the brain wants to be up straight, or the head to be up straight as possible. And if it's out of balance, or we are out of balance below the shoulders on down, it will force a correction on either the left or right side of the neck in an effort to hold the head up straight. And so basically what you get is this imbalance going from the pelvis right up into the neck. And in fact, when we do pelvic correction technique, and it's really cool to do it with a group of people, we will show the individual or somebody watching which side the neck, actually has the compensation. And when you apply pressure to that, it actually acts like a reflex, and you'll see the whole process go back the other way, and the functional short leg will actually extend to the same length as the other side. So, basically, again, it goes back to dem bones, but it all starts with a muscle imbalance in the upper body that triggers a domino effect in the hip, and that in turn kind of backsplashes up through the spine and up into the neck. So ultimately, the domino effect is the first thing causes the second, and the existence of the second actually makes the first one worse.
All right, James. So what does pelvic correction specifically do?
Well, to go back to the tools that we use a wedge, and again, it looks like a big doorstop, and we will actually place that at the top of the femur head, or right at the top of the leg on the short side. And that goes in much at the same as the angle as if you were putting your hand in your pants pocket on that side. So it's kind of about a 45-degree angle pointed and down. And then on the opposite side, we put a wedge right at the crescent of the hip. And if you go back to the idea of the wheel rolling around or rotating, by placing a wedge at the top of the femur head on the short side, and you're lying down when we're doing this, the hip that had rotated too far backward actually releases forward when you do that. And the one that previously had released forward or was going too far forward, by virtue of blocking it at the hip, is prevented from doing so. So instantaneously, it begins a process of correcting the leg balance back to where it should be. And then with that, you'll typically see collateral change up through the spine. And then ultimately, we go back up and test into the neck for whichever side that reflex, or what we call posterior reactive balance point, gets created. And typically, the person will have felt kind of some discomfort when we push on it in the testing process, and they'll generally find it's eased somewhat with the wedges in place. They'll typically have better range of motion through the hips in one of the other tests that we do. But basically what you're doing is you're teaching the body to get back into its proper alignment in the pelvis. And they'll probably do that for about 15 minutes. Then we have them roll over onto their back, and we use the neck roll at this point in time. Again, the neck roll is designed in such a way, its diameter is such that it's about 3.5 to 4 inches, and it's pretty much exactly the measure that we need to help the curve of the neck get reestablished. And that curve of the neck we actually learn when we're crawling as part of our nature's way of getting us to understand how our body is meant to work later. And of course, what we have built into that neck roll is a little piece of traction that when the person is lying on their back with the neck roll under their neck, helping maintain the curve of the neck, that little piece of traction will be aligned with the reflex that we find in the testing process. So you're not only helping to reestablish the contour of the neck, you're also actually applying a traction that works in a very complementary way, or literally the same way as the wedges do. So that's basically how somebody goes about doing it. And I've done it probably with 1,000 people at this point in time. I did it recently this week with an NHL player that I brought a PEMF machine to, and his parents. And it just never ceases to amaze me how universal the issue is and how well and effectively this works.
All right, so is it hard to do?
Actually, no. I mean, it's so simple. It's surprising. I mean, again, there's 4 little tests done in it. We do a leg check or leg length balance, and that's literally just as it sounds. A person lies in a way that their feet are hanging freely. Chiropractic table is perfect, but we can set that up or simulate a chiropractic table in other ways. But we basically just check and see how far the feet hang over the end of the table. We then have a process where we gently raise the heels up towards the backside, just to see what the range of motion and restriction might be for the individual. And what you actually find when you do that, it will often exacerbate the imbalance just by virtue of that process up through the hips. The next one is really simple. We literally have a look at the person as they lie on the table, talk about them not, as if they're not there, jokingly when there's a group of people, but we're just basically looking or comparing how even the sides are on one side or the other. And then we go up and check into the neck balance. And we teach people how to do that. And the doctor that I worked with when we put this together had a wonderful system for ensuring we get that correctly. So the whole thing takes about 10 minutes. You need a partner. I had recently had 2 NHL teammates do it over FaceTime, or I met with them over FaceTime, and they did it with each other. So it's very simple to do, and we've got it all mapped out step by step. It goes back to my background kind of in training and best practice type thing. So it's very, one thing after the other type of thing. And that's basically what we do. The other thing is if, people are new to doing this type of thing with other folks, we kind of, have a process for helping get people comfortable to actually work with others. And, I'll stress something as well. Many people are getting professional care, and they can also ask their professional chiropractor or therapist just to confirm which side is which. But our system has proven very fail-proof over the years. So I think most people would find it very simple to learn, and we're available as a resource all the time as well.
All right, so who's this for, and do you have any favorite success stories?
I do, and actually to run down through the usual benefits of this, I mean, this is going to help typically with chronic pain. It's great for getting people to return to activities and things. Helps with athletic performance and productivity. Will actually even extend the benefits of professional care and help people feel in control. So when you put that list kind of lay over against society, it pretty much relates to anybody that's involved in any kind of athletics, from elite athlete to, serious recreational athlete. Seniors are, a great group. Even therapists themselves. I mean, we had doctors we worked with this particular product who would actually lie on the blocks before working on patients because it actually put them back in their own best alignment.
All right, so what should a listener do?
Well, one of the things that I kind of touched on and made reference here is we've been using pelvic correction as kind of a gift when people work with us on PEMF, because we actually use it as part of our spinal protocol that we've outlined for PEMF. We've had a number of people, through that kind of outreach, ask if they could get other kits. So we're actually, or kits for family members and that. So we're actually putting a kit together right now that will be made available to people. We're still figuring out some of the logistics of all of that. But to that end, we're going to put an article up on our website in the next couple of days that I think you've already offered to share on yours. So it'll be an opportunity for people to kind of read about how this works. I mean, we've run through it fairly fast, but again, if you read the step-by-step, it's very, very easy to follow. I mean, we've had NFL players teach other NFL players how to do it in camp, literally using other things beside the actual blocks. I mean, there's things you can simulate around the home to actually do this. And literally, it's something that every parent should know how to help their kids do, much like they should know how to tell them about, understanding what endocannabinoid system is. It's all part of taking good care of yourself and those whom you care about or care for. So short answer, have a look on your site or mine, and there'll be information there. And we'll probably talk again a little bit about it on the upcoming show next week, which is the one that is going to be about the Replenishing Care and Technologies model, kind of on a more umbrella level, and how a lot of these pieces integrate.
Well, James, you just took my last question away, which was on next week. And this is the thing, James, you got to realize, I like to talk. And I don't get to talk that much because I'm just asking questions, and you just stole one of my chances to talk. But see, the big point here is I just turned what's next week into me talking for a lot longer time than what I would have if I would have just said what's next week.
Well, I apologize. I apologize for that. I get excited when I talk about this stuff, and sometimes I literally have a sign I'm looking at right now saying "Stop talking," and I got a 2-minute card that I hold up to myself every now and then. So sorry, I kind of drifted along. But
my wife has one of them signs she holds up to me too.
Well, on that note, I'm not going to say another word except good weekend to everybody. I feel shame now. I feel shame.
Yeah, this is our 5th show. Make sure you go back to gruelingtruth.com, listen to all the shows, the CBD show, which I've used, the Path of Purity, which is as good as it gets, the Vox Life, which I've had a lot of problems with my legs, my knees, my feet over my life, and I have not had a problem in the last 6 weeks that I've been using them. So make sure you go to thegruelingtruth.com, check out all those shows. And James, you want to tell everybody where they can find you on the Twitter and website?
Yeah, the website, and thank you for that, is www.rcandt.com, and that stands for Replenishing Care and Technologies. On Twitter, we are at Rep Care and Tech, REPCAREANDTECH, and Facebook is Replenishing Care and Technologies.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, my favorite in all these is the PEMF machine, just because of what it did for my son, because he had a tear in his wrist. It was only connected ligament-wise in the wrist by 3%, and I know Dr. Fick worked on him for 2 years during football seasons, and actually got it to the point where when we had it checked out last year, it was like 70% connected. He was able to make it through those 2 years. So the cellular health thing, I think, is something that is missed by a lot of people. And if you want to find out more about it, make sure you go check out Replenishing Care. Make sure you check us out or check them out on thegruelingtruth.com. Check them out on Twitter. And James, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up for this week. We will be back. What day do you want to do next week?
Let's go back to Tuesday, if that works.
That it works for me. So next Tuesday at 10 o'clock will be the next installment of James Comerford and his Replenishing Care and Technologies. So make sure you check it out, because this is something that if you want to be in the best shape you could possibly be in, whether you're 20 years old or 80 years old, Replenishing Care and Technologies is a huge, huge tool to put in your toolbox to help improve your overall health and well-being. All right, guys, we're going to wrap the show up. I want to remind you that you can hear all of our shows on iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, Spreaker, Stitcher, Spotify, wherever you find sports podcasts, you'll find The Grueling Truth. So for James Comerford, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.